Okay, Laura, going to be starting in a second here. I forgot to bring up actually the agenda for the meeting, so if everyone will bear with me for just a minute. Okay, Laura, going to be starting in a second here. I forgot to bring up actually the agenda for the meeting, so if everyone will bear with me for just a minute. Laura, I'm trying to find where the latest agenda is located. Is that? There we go. All right. Hello, everyone. This is Mark Heiser with Building Codes Division. We're going to see about trying to start our Reach Code review meeting today. I want to make sure that Andy is on board today for going through recognizing people who may be putting something up in either the chat or trying to raise their hands for talking today. You on board, Andy?
Mark, this is Julia Heyer. Andy may have had a conflict this morning, but I am going to be doing that in his place.
All right, thank you very much. All right, everyone, thank you very much. Welcome to Building Codes Division's review of the 2021 Oregon Residential Reach Code adoption first meeting. As noted, we'd like to maybe do a really quick overview of introductions from everyone who's on board. As we go through this, we're going to look through the purpose and overview of our methods on how we're looking at this. Also, bring up, and I meant to have this up earlier, looking at some of the proposals as far as some of the savings that we're looking at. Some of this will be in people's proposals. We'll go into that in some detail, but the big piece we're looking at today will be dropping into there are 4 proposals that have really looking at adding additional measures to our current 2021 code, Oregon Residential Specialty Code Additionals Measures Table and 1101.1 looking at the table modifications. We'd like to get those proponents. We'll give you a chance to give an overview of your proposals. We'll sort of open up the conversation, seeing whether there's possibly a chance of some of the proponents being open to maybe combining into a single breach code path. We'll also go through the performance path proposal for alignment with the IECC ERI method. We'll also look at sort of where that is in percent relative improvement to the current ORSC. We'll look at the proposal for the We Stand from the IAPMO group. This is something Green Plumbing was in our original Reach Code. We're looking to see have a path for that as well, since there's been a proposal. We're going to wait on solar and electric vehicle ready later, trying to keep that sort of broken out a little bit, and also some of the other pieces, some of the more individual proposals that came out, not as a complete path, that were in submitted to the division in Part 7, and then we'll go over next steps. So again, today I'd like to encourage everyone to stay muted until called upon, and just so we can avoid a lot of the feedback and things that can happen on these, meetings. We have a lot of people on board today. I'm just going to Um, and already had a
Mark,
couple
we did have a
questions.
question about the font. Is there a way to increase the font on the screen or?
Yes, what I'm going to do right now is change most of these I had changed the zoom to. We'll get this up to 1. This one is a little. We'll even on this one take the font even bigger. Oops, excuse me. And this is to James. Yes, is this a little clearer for people? I know that unfortunately my screen's up. I can't break it out into 2 halves, which would make things a little bit bigger for people, but is that closer to viewable for most people? Okay, I guess just got a better on that one. So if you could please, I'll try and close it. I'm just going to call out initials I see on the screen and have people just do a real quick intro and who they're with, if you could. So we have BP. How about I'll go down. I have an alphabetical list up now. Let's start off with, I see Blake Schleit on the call.
Yeah, good morning. Blake Schleit, Oregon Department of Energy.
Brad Mandel. We'll come back to Brad in a minute. Brendan Deenan.
Yeah, Ian from Malarkey Roofing Products.
Okay. Let's see here. We have some unidentified callers we'll try and get to later. Let's go with Carl Brown. If you can unmute and just give a quick intro. Well, we'll go to the next one, and you'll have to forgive me on these. Kara Soller.
Hi, Kara Saylor, Green
Kara
Energy
Saylor.
Institute out of Lewis and Clark Law School.
Thank you. David Heslem.
Thank you, Mark. This is David Heslem. I'm Executive Director at Earth Advantage and as the named proposer for Zero's Reach Code proposal.
Don McCodrum.
Hello, Don McCodrum with TRC representing the Energy Trust EPS New Construction Program.
Eli Vollum.
Yeah, Eli Volum, Eugene Water and Electric Board, sit on the Residential Manufactured Structures Board and the Construction Industry Energy Board.
Alicia Trainer.
Hi, Alicia Trainer here with Portland General.
Thank you. Eric Lacey.
Hello, Eric Lacey, Responsible Energy Codes Alliance. We submitted some proposals for the REACH code.
Gary Heikkinen.
Hi, Gary Heikkinen, energy consultant. I'm also on the Construction Industry Energy Board, and on contract with Northwest Natural at this point.
James Sayers.
Yes, hi, Mark. I work with Clackamas County. I also serve on the International Code Council Board of Directors, and I'm liaison to the Sustainability Membership Council.
Thank you. James Smith.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Jim Smith with the American Wood Council.
Jed Sherman.
Good morning. Jed Sherman with the IAPMO group here.
John Frankel.
Hi there, John Frankel, Northwest Natural.
John Koreski.
Yeah, John Karasaki with Portland General Electric.
My apologies. John O'Shea.
Hi, John O'Shea, Director of Architecture and Forward Planning for Holt Land Group and Home Build.
John Eicher. Oh, move on. Julia Heyer.
It's Julia Heyer here with Building Codes Division.
Catherine Always.
Kathy Always with City of Portland Plan Review.
Okay. Now we have you down twice. I believe Kelly Thomas is on there.
Yeah, this is Kelly with the Building Codes Division.
Kevin Duell.
Hi, this is Kevin with Northwest Natural and named on our proposal.
Okay. Kevin Gummer.
Kevin Gummer, Building Inspector, City of Portland.
Kimberly MacArthur.
Kimberly MacArthur, Building Official, City of Beaverton.
Larry Owning. All right, we'll skip and go to Mark Lyles.
Good morning, Mark Lyles, Senior Project Manager at New Buildings Institute and named proponent of the ERI proposal.
Okay, Michael Friels.
Good morning, Michael Friels, Oregon Department of Energy.
Mike Goodrich.
Hi, Mike Goodrich with Legend Homes and the Oregon Home Builders Association.
Patrick Schmidt.
Yeah, Patrick Schmidt, Custom Home Designer.
Robert Rice.
Robert Rice, Assistant State Building Official for Oregon Building Codes Division.
Roger Kainu.
Hi, everybody. Roger Kainu, Oregon Department of Energy.
Ryan Shanahan.
Ryan Shanahan with Earth Advantage and Zero Coalition.
Scott Criswell.
Hi, Scott Criswell, SAC Software Solutions out of Portland, developer of CBEC Tools, energy code analysis software for California.
Shilpa Surana.
Hi, Shilpa Surana, representing Northwest Energy Efficiency Alliance and the lead proposer on behalf of NEA.
Warren Jackson.
Warren Jackson with Building Codes Division.
And we have a couple of unnamed callers, 02 and 05. We'll see if someone can identify themselves as the 02 or anyone who also has been missed.
Howard Ahern with Eric's Manufacturing.
Thank you.
Member, good.
Sorry to interrupt. Yes, and you're a proponent for
No,
one of the
I'm
proposals.
a proponent for, yes, sir. Thank you.
And 05 possibly.
Mark, Brad Mandel, I don't know if he's the 05 or on GoToMeeting, but he also indicated he's now ready to confirm his availability.
Okay. Go ahead, Brad.
Were you talking to me?
Yes, just.
Sorry. Brad Mandel, City Bend, Assistant Building Official.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, everybody. I'd like to really jump in quickly here and sort of go through. Again, the purpose of today's meeting is really to get into first overview publicly of looking at the proposals that have come in as options for the 2021 REACH code. We have received several groups of proposals from I think up to actually 8 organizations.
Hey, Dean.
And we're looking to make sure that as we get our introductions put in, excuse me just a second.
Like, there's no.
All right, as we go through this, once again, like to make sure that now that we know everybody's here, if you can, see about sending in a message when you wish to be heard or be introduced. We'll try and make sure we get introductions. Again, identify who you are, organization you're with. We really like to take this information, sort of summarize it, see whether there are some commonalities that we can find between some of the proposals, get comments from the general public, take this feedback and be able to summarize it into breach code proposals that will be taken to the residential board and the construction industry energy board for looking at what could be called our breach code. Sort of it started in 2010 as an above code path for buildings where any jurisdiction would have to recognize that path and be able to accept plans to buildings that are constructed to this above code energy path. What we're hoping to do, and we'll cover more of this later on, and I'll try and make sure I don't scramble around too much, is that we'll cover a little bit more in next steps about other ways to provide feedback to the division. We're going to make sure that we keep comments and anything that comes in on the website page for the REACH code so that people can see. We're hoping that people have had a chance to look at proposals that have come in from other proponents, and so that we can sort of walk through the work here today. Excuse me. One thing that we'll try and bring up in a little while is showing some of the pieces we're hoping to take to the boards before, with the final one is sort of an overview, getting better cost data from the proponents. The Zero Coalition did put in a set of use the Excel spreadsheet that the division had put out as a possible worksheet for people to take advantage of. I see a question that just came in that says, and part of this overview of what the REACH code is, do the RMSB and SEEB need to approve the REACH code, was a question that just came in, and just want to let people know that we take it to them on, I guess, an advisory status. I'm trying to remember all of the pieces that come with this, but we take it to them, get feedback from them. I'm trying to see who my additional policy analyst here is on this, but yes, this will be taken to both the SEEB and the RMSB for review, and then it will be published in a final form at a future date. And we're hoping to get this out for use as soon as possible. All right, with that, what I'd really like to do is start getting into some of the proposals that have come in. And I'm going to have to go way back in time, and we'll try and get these, the views bigger for people to see. And I also have some Word documents that we can look at. But the first, there were 4 proposals from both the Northwest Energy Efficiency Alliance, the Zero Coalition, the Responsible Energy Codes Alliance, and Northwest Natural Gas, that overall looked at increasing the number of additional measures. And what we're going to do is sort of go through those 4 proposals first and sort of look at some of the common pieces. But if the proponents wish to take comments from others, that's sort of what we're here to do today. But here is the Northwest Natural proposal. I'm going to ask Shilpa if she would like to maybe give an overview of her proposal. We're going to come down to the markup language, and Shilpa, if you don't mind, I'll let you take it from here for a short period for an introduction.
Thank you, Mark. Is there a time limit? Let me know when I need to
We'll
stop.
we'll try and keep it sort of in a general high point, and I can bring up on and scroll through to certain sections if you'd like to point out particular pieces.
Okay, cool. So in a sense, NEA, I represent Northwest Energy Efficiency Alliance. My name is Shilpa. And the proposal which we submitted was very closely developed in collaboration with Zero Coalition. So you will see a lot of synergies there. NEA's proposal, the intention is to bring the 2021 Oregon Residential Reach Code into alignment with the goals which were set by the Executive Order 17-20. That is, achieve at least equivalent performance levels to the DOE Zero Energy Ready Home version 6 specifications by 2023. In overview, major changes which we support were bringing the performance testing to achieve air sealing and duct performance. So our proposal introduces prescriptive requirements to achieve an air leakage test of 4 ACH 50 and prescriptive limits the prescriptive duct leakage test to 4 CFM per 100 square feet for the ducts. Along with that, our proposal also requires, as I'm going through the prescriptive requirements, I would also recognize that we also proposed an advanced framing wall option using R23 and 24 inches on center framing. We could not run our analysis to include the energy savings from this update, but we did factor in the cost savings using this strategy. Moving on to the additional measures table, we introduced 2 options to be chosen from the additional measures table. One of our thought was to couple the HVAC, the space heating measure with the water heating measure. We clubbed these 2 options in the additional efficiency option table, as you see here on the screen. We couple the space heating with the water heating measure option for both gas systems and for both electric systems. So you're required to choose 2 options from this table to meet the equivalent performance to DOE Zero Energy spec. Although I do want to point out that we recognize that clubbing the HVAC measure and the water heating measure might create an imbalance as it imbalance in establishing equivalency between the measures, and we are definitely open to splitting this option, which means splitting, not club these 2 together, but have a separate space heating measure and a separate water heating measure. Although that will require us to ask to choose 3 options from this table so that we can meet the equivalent DOE Zero Energy Ready Home specifications. That is the basic essence of our proposal. We did submit, along with Zero Coalition, a spreadsheet putting our energy saving numbers and our cost saving numbers, and I can get to that when called upon. But Mark, that is just a general high level overview here. Let me know if that would be fine.
Shilpa, that's great. Yes, we sort of put together a side sheet over here and wanted to point out that as we go to this, just a few things that are also that you had in there were also noting that whole house ventilation system fan operation is not interlocked with the furnace, to sort of clarify one piece there. Also, One other piece that we'll just note for all of these is that if we do go to multiple measures, we will have to do, and I will come over here to my little drawing tools, little spotlight here, is that when we get to the 8% above code option, we will have to work on something that probably would note that it would not be in combination with any of the other upgrades to sort of look at not having a double dip on those pieces. One other item I did want to bring up today, let's go back to normal non-drawing mode, was that most everyone is proposed putting forward some of the commonalities. Everybody's looking to have the maximum solar heat gain coefficient for glazing at a 0.4 figure. I just noted about the other reduction. There was a have to ask about PG whether it was more a commentary, was noting that if we're looking, one of the water heating methodologies has a drain water heat recovery unit. They wanted to see whether people would be open, I'm assuming, to changing that language, and I'll go back down to that spotlight down here, is if using the drain water heat recovery unit, that it be a vertical and possibly list the minimum efficiency of that. So that'll be another discussion piece. Also, from something the division has noted, there have been questions about whether or not thermostats have to be a programmable 5-day or 7-day. The division would like to make sure we potentially consider cleaning up that language in section N1105.3.3, whether people are opening to making sure that there is a minimum programmability for all home thermostats. We understand that's been taken into hasn't been taken into consideration in some of the modeling. And of course, we will have to do something with the U-factor trade-off table that is in the code. I'm going to scroll down here. Forgive me for a second here, but any changes to numbers, we would have to take, of course, our calculator and update the baseline U-factors. And that's just more a housekeeping piece that I want to make everyone aware of, that, making sure that those are caught up with. On the bottom of this list, and I apologize if it's not overly clear again, I'm on a big screen here, is that we're going to look at solar ready and EV ready sort of under a separate piece, and so that we can have this in the REACH code, but with specific language that we'll go into more detail at a later date after we go through some of these other pieces, and also looking at plumbing and the performance path a little later. So with that, I would open it up if someone wishes to, if people have comments or questions for the proponent at this point, or if not, we'll go to the Zero Coalition and sort of have them give a little bit of an update and potentially some of the minor differences they have with the current proposal. Any questions for the proponent or comments? All right. And do have a note from our administrator just wanting to clarify to everyone about that we are intending to take the residential REACH code to both the CEV and the residential board. It outlines that, just clarifying that, yes, statute does require that we consult with the relevant boards when we take REACH code forward. But at this point, I'd like to ask Mr. Heslom to come on board and maybe give an overview of the Zero Coalition's proposal as well.
Sure, can do that. Can you hear me, Mark?
Yes, thank you.
Great. So as anybody who looked through the Zero proposal and the NEA proposal, in detail would notice, most of the two proposals are identical. There are a few differences. The key difference, I would say, and Ryan Shanahan, who led the technical development of this on Zero Coalition, he's one of our technical committee co-chairs. He's on the line as well in case we need his input. But key differences on the additional measures table, we were adding the use of points or credits, whichever term people would like to use, attached to measures, really for the basic reason that it would allow size of home to be taken into account. So I think as Shilpa was discussing, we are open to adjusting some of our measures so that measures that we have that are mechanical and water heating could be split, and then instead of requiring 2 measures, the table would require 3 measures. But with the size adjustment ability that you would have with using points attached to measures, then for smaller homes, you could only require, say, 2 measures rather than the 3 measures that you would require of a standard sized home. And then if you had a really large dwelling, which is you can see on the language here, so over 5,000 square feet, then that one could actually require even more measures. So what we have in here right now was 1 measure, basically roughly 1 measure, 2 measures, and 3 measures. But if we make the adjustments to the table where we split up mechanical and water heating, then it would be more, 2 measures, 3 measures, 4 measures would probably be how this math would work out. And, again, we wanted to start using the points just to make that straightforward and simple to allocate according to size. And then we also thought just going forward, as we look at multiple cycles down the road of code development, if you started to use points and instead of everything in the options table having to be exactly equivalent to each other, you could start having some things in the options table, say, that are worth half of something else. So that was the other reason to introduce points at this juncture in the REACH code, was just to open up flexibility over time to use points to allow for smaller measures relative to one another to be placed in the table. So does anyone, that's the difference between our proposal really and the NIA proposal when it comes to the table itself. And then the other areas where our proposal differs is that we did add in requirements for electric vehicle ready and additional requirements for solar ready that bring it more into the Oregon definition of solar ready, more into alignment with, I believe it's Appendix U from the IECC. Is that the right appendix I'm naming, Mark? It's Appendix U.
I believe the numbering that is in here is relative to Appendix U, yes. And that is something that we would, look to help cleaning up in your proposal just from a language standpoint. And I will scroll down to that so that everyone can see the
language
and the language here. And the Zero Coalition picked for new language a lovely pinkish that we're going to hopefully people can read.
Right. we were trying to have the base code, then how the base code was changed by the proposed 2021 Oregon code, and then show how our modifications were different or additional in pink. Yeah. So on the solar ready, really, we were going back to a lot of the discussions that happened last summer with the RMSB subcommittee on codes, where these discussions were held, and the Oregon Solar Energy Industry Association had suggestions. Energy Trust Solar Program Manager had suggestions, and really a lot of that was about aligning with Appendix U, which they sort of talk about as space and the chase. At the end of the process for the base code, it ended up kind of just being the chase. But the space, meaning there has to be a predetermined identified space on the rooftop for panels to be located, or somewhere else, on the property it could be. But there has to be a space for panels of a minimum size, and then there has to be, space in the electric service panel, and there has to be space like on the wall for an inverter to hang. So that it's adding requirements above and beyond what the proposed 2021 Oregon code would have for solar ready. And in our opinion, it was trying to come to a more complete definition of what solar ready would mean. Do you want to go over the electric vehicle part then too, Mark?
Let's save these two as a breakout for when we're going to try and break out this sort of more of the detail of this for a little later when we look at solar ready and EV ready, because we have a lot of commenters who have put in public comment, and we'd like to sort of make this so that we're looking at the energy performance path, and then we'll get into the EV and PV ready. But that's a great introduction on it, because we have some pieces we'd like to discuss on that, and just get feedback. First, I'll ask if there are any questions from people out in who are attending today about any questions for the proponent, and then.
Hi, this is Kevin with Northwest Natural. And good morning, David. I had a question about the points system for different sizes of houses. Is the goal there to get a similar energy intensity? That is, consumption per square foot?
I think that rather than that being the goal, I think that would be a result. I think part of it is, it's around that smaller homes inherently already use less energy than larger homes do. And so it's taking that into recognition that if somebody decides to build, when they're making the decision about constructing the building, if they can be more space efficient, they're already going to have overall less energy consumption. And therefore, they could have fewer additional measures that they'd be required to do. So in the end, I think it would lead to EUIs that are more equal. But again, I think that's just how you might measure it. But the intent is really around if somebody can make decisions about building smaller, then, and that's inherently more energy efficient, then they would have to do fewer additional energy efficiency measures.
And this is Mark Heiser with the division. I wanted to just point out something about, on size. And from the last RMSB meeting, there was a lot of discussion about size, and the division's takeaway was that there was a request that a more detailed look at size and where you add more or less for the homes from a standpoint of affordability and actual construction in the state is happening, where those breakpoints are on size of homes. So this is something that the division is going to be looking into, and probably be looking at requests to NEA and other regional stakeholders to try and come up with enough data to, at some point, there is a desire from the board to look at what can be done for small, affordable homes, what can be done for the average typical home, and taking this into account. So there will be more work from the division soon. So that will be something that will be part of when we're looking at commonalities, whether or not we wish to include it now. The board was really hoping is looking to get that in the future, but looking to get a lot more detailed analysis, and the division is hoping to help move that forward.
This is Eli Roland with EWEB. Can I have a comment that's going to lead to a question?
Yes.
So our ultimate goal is to get to the equivalent performance level of the DOE Zero Energy Ready standard. So I think it kind of, at some point we need to define what, like, how are we going to determine what that equivalent performance level is? And the Zero Energy Ready Home standard does factor in size. So it seems like that's what this proposal is attempting to do. So I guess the first question is, are we attempting to get to that Zero Energy Ready equivalency with this round of REACH code to provide a roadmap for industry? Or are we going to get to a REACH code that's going to kind of get us a lot of the way there and then do the work? But I guess at some point we need to define how are we going to determine if whatever we have is equivalent level of performance to the Zero Energy Ready spec.
Well, I mean, from our proposal, for the Zero proposal, I think in our preamble, we said that's what we're trying to do with this proposal. That isn't necessarily what, the division asked for. But just for clarity, that's was the goal of what we were trying to propose in the Zero proposal. And that was one reason why we included the EV Ready and Solar Ready components, was those were elements of Executive Order 1720. So that's why you tried to be responsive. Yeah. Again, it wasn't a request from the division. So that's not my place to say. I just wanted to explain to you why our proposal was framed that way. So.
And from the division standpoint, this is Mark Heiser. Go ahead, Shilpa.
Yeah, I just wanted to back up, just give a brief overview of how we approach the equivalency and what kind of energy analysis we did behind the scenes. If it's helpful, I can give a little overview of how we came up with the proposal based on some energy analysis which we could do in the limited time frame we had.
Thank you, Shilpa. I think at this point it's so as for the executive order, there's sort of two pieces here. The proponents have done based on their analysis of what the equivalent, or their view of the equivalent energy performance. There are a lot of questions and still unsettled pieces as far as what is the official level for that, and both the division and Oregon Department of Energy are going to be continuing, as we've announced in previous meetings, reaching out directly to the ZERH team to get what are all of the equivalent pieces, what would be a Climate Zone 4C, Climate Zone 5B, ZERH home, so that we can bring all of those pieces in and say, that's the performance of a ZERH home that is per the ZERH program, per the executive order, so that anyone who is wishing to put forward proposals to do better than that when we get to the 2023 ORSC, we will have complete and total alignment with what was in the executive order. There are enough open pieces there. So we'll be getting to that, the official point, and looking at the REACH code relative to those. But as we've noted, there's still questions as to finalizing what that equivalent performance is moving forward. So at this point, yeah, well, really, I think it's time to go to really the response, Eric, and unless there are more questions for this proponent this time.
I want to make a statement of clarify something. This is Ryan Shanahan with Earth Advantage and Zero. In that the proposed wall upgrade we're suggesting is really a UA upgrade, moving to 0.57 to 0.59, which means you could do R23 insulation or advanced framing. So there's really a cost savings pathway, which is moving to advanced framing. Because we're acknowledging that this R23 insulation likely costs more, but the less lumber costs less. So I just wanted to say that out loud.
Okay, thank you. And yes, it's up on the screen now, either R23 advanced or U factor of 0.57. Just one quick feedback from the division that we wanted to point out from structurally, 3-story homes cannot use advanced framing on the first level. Under IRC current methodologies, they'd have to go through something special to do those, just to let people know on that. And we did do a quick look at really the difference in cost between R21 that insulation versus R20 at 16-inch width versus R23 insulation at 24-inch width. There is a significant cost difference between those, but we'll probably be reaching out to the proponents on that for a little more background on what some of their assumptions were on that. But as wood goes, as you're removing wood, you are putting in more insulation. So
yeah,
just want to clarify some of those statements. But moving on, would like to next go to Mr. Lacey, if you'd like to sort of give an overview. I have a Word document. It came in how many different pieces, Eric?
Well, I think we had 10 individual proposals. And that's, and I can explain why we went with that approach. First, I would just say that the NIA proposal and the Zero Coalition proposals are both very strong, very well documented. I think either one of them would be a great foundation for a REACH code. And so we support both of those proposals wholeheartedly. We took a little different approach in that we broke up our proposal into several individual proposals so that depending on what direction this group wanted to go, you could kind of adapt and use what you found to be useful. Rather than put one fully integrated single proposal in, there's a few individual pieces here that might, I think, enhance or go kind of the next level with either the NIA or the Zero Coalition proposals. I did want to point out that there are some commonalities among, I think, all the main proposals. For example, I think you mentioned the SHGC eliminating option 7 from the table and just generally requiring the selection of more options. One kind of philosophical consideration for this group is, do you want the REACH code to have a stronger base set of prescriptive requirements, more insulation, better windows, and so on? We submitted proposals that would do that. Or do you want to have more options required or more points required? And we submitted proposals that would do that as well. Or do you want some combination of the two? It does make sense that a REACH code home would have a good envelope, would also have some kind of enhanced measures, mechanical equipment, lighting, solar, EV, whatever else. So I'm not sure which of our proposals you're looking at here. I think NEA's approach was to, I think, kind of ramp up the efficiency of the individual proposals and require more of them. I think Zero Coalition turns it to a points table and ramps up the efficiency. We took an approach in our approach to the table where we want to go back to the way Oregon did it previously, where you have a split, where you have envelope requirements and then you have mechanical efficiency requirements, and you have to select something from each of those tables. And I think there was one other larger proposal that did that same thing. So, the various RECA proposals that are broken up, there's a proposal to require air leakage testing in every home. There's a requirement to test the ducts in every home, whether or not the ducts are inside conditioned space. There's a requirement to put in better wall insulation in the prescriptive path, and so on. And so, I don't know what the best order would be to approach these in, or how you want to attack it, whether you want to pick kind of a base package first and then consider whether these individual proposals would improve it. But at least, I wanted to explain what the theory was behind, the reason why we submitted 10 proposals instead of 1. So I'll leave it there and see if anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Eric. Yes. So what we're looking at first is sort of from your package of what would be important to you for having on a sort of, first off, increasing the additional measures, number one, before we look at more prescriptive requirements. And what I've got up now is, of course, let me go back to this table, is showing that you have split the table into envelope measures and equipment efficiency measures, sort of dividing the two. And of course, yes, everyone has gotten rid of what was the 2021 code, additional measure 7. Also wanted to point out another difference that you have is more alignment with the IECC, IRC about the air home tightness testing. Model code has a requirement of a test, the whole home blower door testing to 3 ACH 50 as their prescriptive minimum, and this seems to be moving it closer to that requirement and closer to what would be needed under the ZERH program for an above code project. And of course, you adjust the envelope to, I believe it was 2 ACH 50 testing for one of your one of the tables you had a tighter air change target, and that was one piece we were hoping to get out for discussion of sort of some of the general differences, and looking at as we're moving toward that ZERH target, tightening up under a REACH code for better home air sealing. So I'm putting that out there for discussion and maybe some feedback from RECA.
And Mark, you're just reminded me of something I failed to mention. We used as the source of a good number of our proposals the 2021 IECC, and we figured that since Oregon will likely be looking at this in the next round of the Oregon Residential Specialty Code, we looked to the 2021 IECC for any measures that Oregon hadn't already adopted. In some cases, you've already met or exceeded the 2021 IECC, but in cases where you hadn't, we looked there for some direction.
Any other questions for Eric or division at this point? Anyone? Okay, and yes, we did want to point out that, yes, but again, about air leakage and see whether for the home building testing, whether the NEA and Zero Coalition might consider moving to the IECC home air leakage.
All right, Mark, this is David again from Earth Advantage and Zero. You know, and maybe Ryan could speak in here as well, but I do know that like the Zero Technical Committee did have a lot of discussion around ACH levels. And you know, because we included, like NIA did, you know, testing being required for all homes. And there was a lot of discussion about, you know, going right to where the IECC level is versus, you know, since we'd be introducing in this REACH code, you know, testing sort of for the first time that would be required for all homes, again, in the REACH code. And Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, if you're still on, but you know, our thought was we were trying to meet the marketplace where they were at and bring them forward, you know, a little bit rather than going further than we thought the marketplace was going to be ready for right off the bat.
Yes, that's
Ryan, I wasn't at all those meetings, Ryan, but I'm trying to paraphrase.
Yeah, the idea was to meet the market where we think the market is at. And this is largely based on the information I've seen of homes coming through the Earth Advantage program. So we have a pretty good idea of what above code builders are doing. And so from there, we assumed that going for more aggressive targets really wasn't the goal. The goal was to get blower door testing into the code.
Okay, Mark Heiser with Division. Yeah, just wanted to say that, yeah, we looked, and the reason why we're bringing this up is because we have looked at the data, and right now the average program home is at 3.2. ACH 15, we thought the next generation above code program home might do better than they're currently doing now, since this is the REACH code for those above code homes.
It could, but as David stated earlier, I think one of our largest goals is to see if this REACH code can also be a blueprint for the next base code cycle. If that's the case, then establishing a more aggressive code for blower door testing could be problematic for builders who had never done it before.
Yeah, I think that's like philosophically the difference there. We were thinking, yeah, if this was going to be code for everybody in 2023, for instance, then expecting everybody to get to 3 ACH 2 years from now just seems like a big ask of the market to get there. Because it took those program builders, not all of them, but it took a lot of them a long time to get to the 3 neighborhood. You know, they learned a lot over the years from having the results of testing. So I think that was part of our philosophy, like get the testing in. If this was going to be a model for what 2023 looked like, get the testing in 2023 at 4, and then, you know, over the next couple of cycles, you know, we could be catching up to those tighter requirements by giving, you know, your non-program builders the same, you know, even faster.
Okay, David.
I did learning.
All right, all right. So if there aren't any other comments, yeah, we're gonna have to see. We're going to be getting really tight on time here. Want to move on to the Northwest Natural proposal. Kevin Dewell is here today. They're looking at doing, again, splitting it up, requiring 3 measures, but splitting up the table and also doing, as you can see, is scrolling past now about for existing construction, changing their measures. But I'm going to try and zoom in enough for everyone to read this. But if you don't mind, Kevin, that you're looking for one from either efficient building envelope options or the air leakage option. then picking one from high efficiency HVAC and one from water heating to get to a grand total of 3 possible options. That's your, I guess, Kevin, I'll try and hope that was a good summary of what you have there.
It's a great summary, Mark. And yeah, there's 4 categories, and you're basically picking one measure from 3 of them. And I thought there was to maintain the simplicity of the existing code, partly to maintain the high compliance rate that we have, but also that these measures work somewhat independently. And the thought there too was this allows a builder to have an all-electric home, a gas electric home, however they want to arrange their fueling, they can accomplish these paths, and that it's not much of a, it's literally the table that we have now rearranged a little bit and then add another measure. We did add a couple things. We did change the electric heat pump water heater to a tier 3 because basically that's what everyone's using anyway. And we did pull back in that whole house ventilation flow rate reduction that was in the original BCD proposal, just to align this with that ASHRAE exception. I believe that's an ASHRAE exception. But yeah, and I was actually taken, we came up with this independently from the Zero and the NEA proposals, but I was taken at how common they were actually, very, very similar. So yeah, it's not that complex. It's very simple.
So this is John Karasaki with PGE.
Hey, John.
Hi. So the only the thing I agree with what the path that you're taking. One thing I'm a little hesitant on or would like to strike is that tier 3 for the heat pump water heater. Not necessarily because of the efficiency, and I think you're right that that's what's most are using now anyway. But I see kind of in the future around new homes specifically, where we want to drive the placement of that device in an area that it doesn't require ductwork. And you could see a major home builder, if they're, like they are now, if they probably have the potential when they're literally trying to save every single penny or every single dollar, that they could drive a manufacturer to nix the ducted requirement of the tier 3, but still maintain the energy efficiency requirement of tier 3, or tier 4 or higher, even. But have that's the only thing around the tier 3 that I'm hesitant because of that it's required, that ducting requirement is required to be designed into the product, where we might have a whole bunch of garage installations forever. For instance, that we wouldn't need that. We wouldn't need that ducting requirement, and that a little additional cost the builder would want to save. Obviously, the manufacturer would want to save as well.
Well, that's a really good point, John. I think that's a good consideration.
Okay, so and now just go back to the prior proposals, has been I believe NEA and the Zero Coalition had proposed a UEF of 2.9.
Yep.
So that would sort of meet the same needs, but we were going to ask about tier 3, which would be acceptable. So I'll try and get a little.
Yeah, if you look at the tier 3 requirements, the efficiency is lower than that, but the big hang up, I think, is the ducting requirement. So the unit itself has to have the capability of basically simultaneously supply and exhaust ducting.
Right. Seems like the UEF goal is more universal.
Right.
And it's a federal, sort of a standard we can tie things to. So
tie things back to federal, right?
Yeah. Any other comments or questions at this point? If that be, we'd like to move on to, oops, I need to make sure I get to the right one.
This is Shilpa from NIA here, and I just wanted to respond to the Tier 3 advanced water heating spec. It should be pretty close to the number UEF of 2.9, but I'm happy to, respond specific questions. The UEF number which we put forward in the proposal was informed by market data which we see under the heat pump water heater program NIA actually runs. So it's based on the program data, and it's based on the market penetration of that product. Specific to the ducting issues, I am not the expert, but I'm sure there would be somebody in the organization who could respond to that. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, we can do a little more back and forth with the proponents on those, and I think we can come up with a number. And it looks like, based on market data, setting that 2.9 sounds like a good number to proceed with.
2.9's, I think, great, and it aligns with what California is doing too. So there's some pretty significant programs in place down south of us and they all align with that 2.9, which is the federal number.
So now I'd like to look to New Buildings Institute's proposal, which is really a performance path, which appears to align with the ERI used in the IECC. We'll scroll down if you need me to do it, but if NBI's representative would like to turn it over to you for sort of a general overview of your proposal.
Sure. Mark Lyles here. So this would be a secondary performance methodology for complying with the REACH code that basically uses the ERI approach, would introduce the ERI approach to the Oregon code, which is not currently there. For those of you who are not familiar with ERI, it's similar to HERS in some ways, but some slight differences, and it's supported from a modeling methodology by ResNet 301, which is the modeling standard. I also mentioned that ERI is also used by the ASHRAE residential standard, ASHRAE 90.2. So really the intent of this proposal is to set a highly efficient ERI score. Pulling from both ASHRAE 90.2 and the IECC, the efficiency requirement would be an ERI score of 47. And then this proposal would require that the delta of that 47 be offset with renewable energy. So it can be a combination of on-site and off-site renewable energy to get that ERI score down to 0. So the ERI, as I mentioned, the ERI scores that we pulled here for our proposal are from both IECC and ASHRAE 90.1 for our climate zones. The 90.2, in terms of cost effectiveness, in order to clear the cost effectiveness criteria of 90.2, it cleared that. So it checks that box. And then just in terms of how it compares to the base code, the residential base code here in Oregon, what the ERI score basically does is it pegs a score of 100 to your 2006 baseline, which is similar to what the baseline is that we're using for the Oregon code. And each score is basically a percent. So it's about 53%. An ERI of 47 is 53% better than a 2006 home. So that's kind of how it works. I'll leave it there and open it up for any questions that folks from the Bureau or on the line might have. Oh, and I'll just also quickly, Mark, if you scroll up a little bit to the table with the ERI scores No, further down. So the footnote here, the building shall meet the requirements of section. So that basically is using the envelope requirements of the REACH code as a backstop. So you can't do any worse in terms of your envelope when you're using the ResNet modeling methodology than what the prescriptive requirements for the envelope would be in the REACH code.
Okay. So it does, yeah, there was a question from Eric about sort of backstop envelope. So a quick question, and this gets us back to performance paths for all of these, just some things from the division would be, and for the other groups to consider, is the equivalent. We currently have a performance path that was written out very similar to what was for commercial, that when you have additional measures, you would not model without additional measures. And I'll try and get my drawing tool here to sort of have a backstop that, oh, I need to erase that, of modeling 8% better than the baseline home. To the other proponents under the prescriptive path, with the division will be reaching out and asking them sort of what their target would be, minus additional measures, how someone could do a performance path. But to NBI, the 2018 IECC has a ERIs of, I believe, 61 and 62 for Oregon, or for our climate zones. Where would these 47 numbers be relative to the current Oregon code? What percentage improvement would that be?
So based on the ecotope analysis that I've reviewed of the 2021 ORSC, it looks like that's about 34% better than a 2005 home. So if we're saying this is an ERI of 47, that's 53% better than a 2006 home. So I'm estimating about almost a 20% improvement over the 2021 ORSC is what a 47 would be. Do you follow that kind of math there?
Yes, follow that. Yes, it's about a 24% over the 2018 code. And another question that, so this path would actually require you to achieve a 0 though, correct?
Correct. So it does include that requirement for solar, in addition to the ERI of 47. Okay. So
okay, and just comparing the language with what's in the IECC, we'd just like to ask about, there's things that are with that come with the IECC, some of the, how to put this, the enforcement language and the like. Is there a possibility of coming up with something we can do for?
Sure.
That we want to have in there, but this would be a standalone path then, and it would be not have in there for a REACH code the current modeling. This would just be a separate methodology.
For the REACH code?
Yes, the ERI path would be a separate from the other performance paths. We just need to make sure that we're taking that either out and making this the one performance path for the REACH code, or aligning the numbers up above for those targets to meet the new REACH code. So that'll be something we'll be reaching out to everybody on. But if we could get about the software and some of the other pieces of language that are out there that are in the IECC, so that building officials can maybe make sure they've got everything right on enforcement. A few pieces from the IECC just to make it in that we
Okay.
We'll reach out to you on that to just see if that's okay to have a little more.
Sure. We're
meat to
willing to work with you.
on that, yes.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. All right. Any other questions for Mark? If not, and I need to see about how to get rid of this. But
There's a question in the chat, Mark.
Yeah. So the question about the backstop. Yeah. So that was just that footnote in the table, which is basically sets the envelope requirements of the reach code as the backstop.
So yeah, and I believe that was. I'm seeing that yes, Eric responded that it was answered. The next piece is the proposal from Howard, and I believe he's still on board. It's bringing in some language that's about protection of piping insulation. Some of this is in our commercial mechanical code. This is also whether or not it would be open for people to put in about requirements that are in the IRC, the IECC residential, just about protection of that refrigerant piping insulation. And Howard, are you on board to give a little more background real quick? Or I understood that he was going to be on and off driving today, so wasn't sure when we could get him on the phone. Any questions about this piece? We did want to point out that the original model code language about adhesive tape being prohibited was originally tied to everyone seeing the refrigerant insulation that gets cracked and nasty outside and not allowing adhesive tape to be that protectant. This is more something that might go to the mechanical board and the residential board, sort of outside energy, but he does provide some background on this, and we will be looking at that in more detail. Sorry, Howard can't get on board now, but if people have any questions, please raise your hand or chat. Okay, nothing else. So we'll go to Jed with the IAPMO group about the We Stand. If I believe they can give a little background on what this is about, and we'll have a couple of questions for We Stand about, or for IAPMO about the application. But if Ms. Sherman, are you on board to give a little background on your proposal, please?
Yes, I'm here, Mark. You ready to go?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. By way of background, the 2011 Oregon REACH Code incorporated the water conservation provisions that were in our old Green Plumbing and Mechanical Code supplement. And those were advanced and cutting edge at the time. IAPMO reconfigured the old Green Plumbing and Mechanical supplement into an actual standard, water efficiency standard, which is an accredited process document, and it's been updated. So the present REACH code doesn't have the newest and latest and greatest provisions in it. The 2017 We Stand is the most current edition that is currently published, and the 2020 is due out in the next 2 months or so. And basically what this is doing is it's bringing the same provisions, but the most cutting edge and the newest and most modern versions of it for water efficiency and water conservation. Oregon adopts the Oregon Plumbing Specialty Code, which is based on the Uniform Plumbing Code. And this document is the way the evolution of the code works is a lot of times the we stand provisions are brought forward as code change proposals into the body of the main plumbing code at the next cycle. So the we stand is a cutting edge document that brings in all the latest technological advancements for water conservation and so forth. So since the Oregon Plumbing Code is already based on the Uniform Code, the we stand is a natural place to increase water efficiency for any reach type code. And the beauty of we stand is it applies to all applications, residential, single family, multifamily, commercial, industrial, and so forth. So basically this is updating Oregon, which is a very sustainable and forward thinking state, to the latest edition of the we stand document.
Thank you. And for a little background on having been at the, or heard the cats for the very first reach code, we did spend a lot of time looking at things that weren't currently in code. A lot of discussions about composting toilets and other technologies that have moved forward since then. From the division, we just want to ask, are there, if this were brought in, would it be as allowing an above code home to use the green plumbing code? And because we're trying to determine what would be sort of required under it. I do know that there's a lot of extra information on there about how to do better. I believe there's information on better hot water distribution as well, and just trying to get a feel for the intent on how it would be applied, or it's referencing it for use by homes using the REACH code.
Yeah. Again, the REACH code is an aspirational code that goes above and beyond the requirements of the basic code, whether in all the disciplines that applies. And it affords people the opportunity to be even more creative in the ways that they save resources. In this case, potable water is a huge one. And then by extension, what ends up going down to the wastewater treatment plant as it goes out the other side. And so there's huge opportunities for greater efficiencies for people to save water, which in turn then, saves them money as far as operating their own household. Our code is basically an overlay type code as well that dovetails with any other code. And so it just affords people some opportunities to do things more efficiently. Mark, you mentioned water sizing and water piping, for example. If you can reduce the length of the run and reduce the size of the pipe, you can gain some efficiencies for energy conservation because you're not heating nearly as much water. The run to the point of use is much shorter, and the amount of water wasted in order to get hot water to the actual point of use is reduced. So all of these types of possibilities are available to residential construction. Did I capture and answer your question?
Yes, just would it require the reduced pipe sizing methodology, or provide the method, or provide that method for doing
Very
it?
good.
Yeah, that was sort of the point. In other words,
Okay.
if it also mentions composting toilets, we're not saying they're required to do it, just says
Right.
Okay.
Right. You're precisely right, Mark. It provides a pathway to enable people to do those things. It doesn't require it, but it says if you want to do it, here's the methodology for installing that and putting that into your system.
Thank you. Any questions from the group? Last one was, there was a general comment from PGE. Are any additional points you would want to bring up from your letter?
I don't have any additional points. Be happy to talk through anything if there's any questions, though.
Okay. If not, let's go. We're going to scroll back to the Zero Coalition proposal about bringing in The next level of solar ready, and we'll discuss this first. I know we had a couple of commenters send in letters, and would just like to open up discussion of what is currently in the NEA application of the replacement N1107.4 for solar ready. Just want to sort of get some feedback from the group on that as to whether or not the language that, the Zero Coalition put forward is acceptable. I know we had from OSEA and the solar installers. Want to open up the floor now and just a discussion on solar ready.
This is Eli with eWeb. I guess I'd just like to bring up one of the points of discussion at the board level was the lack of definition. So it might make sense to go back to the governor's office and get a little clarification so everyone's kind of on the same page as far as what we're trying to accomplish.
All right, I've got that note down, Eli. So David and the Zero Coalition more or less brought in I'm trying to remember which code had in Appendix U versus Appendix T, but the current IRC solar ready path language. I know that we received comments from, I believe, OSEA, and I apologize for the other group. If are any of those persons on the line today who wish to comment about their support or non-support for inclusion of the solar ready language? Well, we'll make sure we get their letters posted on the website as well. David, from the Zero Coalition standpoint, did you receive additional feedback as well from the solar industry?
Yeah, I mean, that was the basis that we worked from, Mark, as we solicited input from OSEA and from Solar Oregon to say, you know, what did they think would work from the contractor point of view, and then also input from the solar program manager at Energy Trust, who works obviously a lot with the contractor industry, and they've set their own standards for what this means that have been utilized for many years out in the marketplace by builders and subcontractors. So that was our origination point for what we developed.
All right, thank you. Just going through this again, it triggers doesn't trigger, but it does trigger if you have more than 600 square feet of roof area oriented between 90 degrees and essentially between east and west, rotating around to the south, is sort of the trigger for being solar ready. Then on the construction documents, you are needing to sort of note where that is, correct?
Correct.
And then if you're, it shall not be less than 300 square feet. And of course, if some homes, and the reason why we're looking to break this out separately is some homes may be small enough to where they're outside of this, that it's not to be a REACH home. If they don't have this, they aren't completely excluded from doing the REACH code. So this is a solar ready path in the REACH code.
Right.
And that's sort of why we're discussing this now, because some homes are shaded from obstructions that we'll find down here in section N1107.4.3 or shaded.
Right. And if I remember back to some of the feedback that I heard when this was being discussed as part of, potentially to be part of the regular code, one of the issues that came up was builders in subdivisions, have a standard plan, and that plan might get used in a variety of orientations. And so in terms of orientations, north, south, east, west. And in some cases, a plan might work in one orientation, but wouldn't work in another orientation due to how much roof area is, tilted in one direction or another. So there, perhaps there'd be other people on the line around this, but the 300 square feet is the area for the array itself. And that area is the minimum size, but it also doesn't say that it has to be contiguous. So I think there is flexibility within that definition. I'm just bringing that up to address concerns that I did hear at other meetings around the 2021 code development.
So one quick clarification, yes. So if a home had a roof where had a small slope section on facing north or south, but a big slope section facing north, and that would that home have to redo its roof to meet the REACH code if it did not have 300 square feet or was broken up with dormers or something?
Sorry. I mean, to me, that goes in the upper left section of what you have on the screen right now. The last sentence in that upper left section is the key definition there.
Okay. So if they have the 600 square feet, they need to identify the 300.
Yep.
Okay. Want to make sure that, yeah, again, when we all love code and how it flows, and just to make sure that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed, if we come back with some additional editorial to make sure the code language can be properly enforced, we want to make sure we get the intent out. Okay.
Hey, Mark.
Yes.
Hey, Gary Heikkinen. The other concern I remember since I was on that review committee in regards to expanding the solar ready was, if it were in the base code, it would impose these requirements on all new homes, regardless of whether they might ever use them. I think in the context of a voluntary REACH code, I don't see that as much of an issue. I think the issue back when we were reviewing it as part of the base code is that it would impose those requirements on all new homes. So I just thought I'd mention that.
Thank you. That's sort of the sort of feedback that we hope to, we want to hear everybody's input if they have certain things they want to give feedback on as we take this forward as the above code, REACH code, what's going on with this. So sounds like solar is sort of over. On electric vehicle charging?
Mark, this is Don McCodrum with the EPS team.
Yes, Don.
Hi. So in 2020, Energy Trust EPS program rolled out a net zero and energy smart home incentive package, and it has some requirements around Solar Ready that include an off-ramp for homes that can still qualify for the sort of a broader set of incentives through no fault of their own, no fault of design, et cetera. They are unable to get the requisite solar exposure. And so I'd be happy to share that language. Of course, I'm not advocating for inclusion or anything in particular, but we do have language that we've worked through on exceptions.
Thank you, Don. If you can send that, we'll post it and pass that on to the proponents as well. So moving on to one of the last pieces is, of course, the electric vehicle charging. The language is looking for 1 and 2 family dwellings and townhomes with attached parking garages or off-street spots adjacent to the dwelling structure, having a raceway, 1 inch, and having capacity and want to go through this and make sure that we're clear on what the intent is that each dwelling unit install electrical service and panel capacity to provide 50 amps for a future electric vehicle charger. Want to be clear that whether it's the actual circuit breaker size or that's the load of the charger.
That would be the load of the charger that the electrician would have to plan for when designing the overall service size for the home.
So the breaker would need to be larger than a 50 amp.
The load, again, like you're going to get beyond my experience. If there's an electrician here, help me out. But 50 amp was stated as the largest that anybody would foresee there. And, I know that overall size of the panel gets factored at a lesser rate than the amperage of the actual branch circuit. So this is the amperage of the branch circuit. So when you're calculating the overall service panel size, less than this amperage, but this would be the amperage for the branch circuit.
So the actual, so just to clarify, when you size the breaker for the load, your breaker has to have additional capacity above that amp draw. So a 50 amp, quote, a 50 amp service to a charger can do about 40 amps of service, which can do about, if I remember correctly off the top of the head, it's somewhere around 8 kilowatt feed to the vehicle charger, which is somewhere, can do a little over 400 miles a day of charging if you're doing this overnight. So that's why I'm trying to be clear that there are certain chargers that would need a 50 amp breaker, but are running more 40 amps and then have the ability to go down to 30, 20. You can selectively pick how much charge you can do. Just trying to clarify whether that's the actual draw load of the charger or the breaker service size for it. And we'll look for some clarification. I think you can
I think we
check with
we
people
can,
on that.
Yep, we can, we talked to Fourth Mobility about this. We also checked in with folks at the city of Portland that have also been exploring EV charging efforts. So, if we can be of service and helping clarify that, Mark, we can, or you're qualified to do yourself.
Since we have someone from PGE on board right now, we noticed that they do have, they could provide a separate service to the charger that could be done on time of use. looking at the residential rate structure, is our PGE person still on board on that?
I'm still on board, and I was listening to the conversation, and just I'm a mechanical engineer, not an electrical engineer. So, but at the same time, I just got a 50 amp. I had a 40 amp, but I just bought a 50 amp EV charger for my home, and it's hooked up to a 50 amp circuit, and it hasn't tripped it. But now what you're encouraging me to do is put some CT clamps on the in my panel box and see what it's pulling, because I that is something that I hadn't really thought. I mean, that's minutia, down in the weeds that I hadn't thought that we needed to go there. But having said that, the home, you could always add another meter. I mean, you can add a separate meter. You have to add a separate meter for solar and other things. But I think for just broad scale market acceptance, I think what we're trying to do as a utility is have customers put this on the current meter that they have, and then switch, if they want to, they can switch the whole home rate schedule to a time of use. And I know others in our company, other groups in our company are designing specific rate schedules and demand response programs around this. But I'm not the expert in any fashion on those specific tariffs and rate schedules.
This is Ryan Shanahan. I just wanted to chime in here mentioning that I've done some research for this for the Earth Advantage program, as well as making my home future ready for EVs. And essentially this language lines up with what you'd want to do to make a home ready for level 2 charging, which is industry standard, typically aligns with the NEMA 1450 plug. And I'm fairly certain that you can use a 50 amp circuit with the 50 amp charger like John mentioned. I also think that the language here about having the capacity is about the total capacity of the panel, and not specifically saying that the breakers themselves need to be installed. It's about having the space in the panel and the total capacity on the panel, so that somebody could easily plug in the breakers to get them what they need without major upgrades.
Okay, thank you. All right. With that, I believe, Kelly, did I get all of the topics? I just want to make sure I got that. Yes, otherwise we'll go back to the our agenda today and sort of go through next steps. And the division is going to try and summarize these and see whether, again, maybe reach out one more time. And there's another meeting with the Oregon Department of Energy tomorrow where this will be discussed. Reach out and see if there's some abilities to either combine the NEA and say the Zero Coalition proposal into one and find some of those synergies, maybe reaching out to also RECA and whether they're up to maybe a prescriptive version as well as a additional measure version, but looking at those that are looking at the additional measures tables and seeing whether there's an ability to get to maybe one or possibly two paths on the additional measure table varieties, working on with, again, with the solar and EV ready people on getting their pieces going, getting correct language for allowing a the latest green plumbing code, like was allowed in the last REACH code, so that some of the things that wouldn't be allowed under the plumbing code can be done in energy efficient homes. What we're looking to do is get any additional feedback from everyone by Monday, February 1st. I will look at my calendar one more time to make sure I said the date correctly. Let me find that.
Yeah, that's correct, Mark, the 1st.
Yes, on the 1st. So if people have concerns or comments about proposals that have been reviewed today, we're going to try and see if we can get a summary put together of each of these and maybe just maybe come up with, yes, two or fewer additional measure paths, and then look from that point. Our first, Kelly, when is the first RMSB meeting where we're going to go through this?
Well, the February 9th is the seed where we should have some sort of draft available. And then we've got possibly, I don't think it's official yet, but possibly a joint or a residential and seed meeting in mid-March at some point to for final comments.
All right. So any additional comments today from everyone? As again, please give feedback, and we will probably be reaching out to the proponents for some additional cost information, potentially if things revise a little bit, so that we can present this to the boards again as an optional. Cost doesn't work in as much when it does go through the normal adoption process. Then under Executive Order 20-04, we're going to be looking into these in a lot more detail as we head toward that good 2030 target. This would thank everyone. I'd like to thank everyone for what they've put in today. I think this gets us really on target for that 2030 reduction target that was set forth in EO 2004. Any other follow-up from division staff or questions from the general public today?
Hey, Mark, I'll just note that we did provide a cost worksheet available, a blank one for submitting these. And want to take a minute to thank David Heslem for actually filling that out and submitting it with his proposal. Thanks, David. But those are the kind of things that would really, like Mark said, well, cost does not necessarily reflect as heavily on REACH code as it does the standard code. There has been a lot of discussion that we're trying to align this with the ZERH program in terms of its energy intensity. So if we can understand that up front with this REACH code, it would make the process for the 2023 and the ZERH equivalency a lot easier. So I know folks like Eli ask like almost every meeting for that information. So we'd certainly like to provide it next time you ask.
Thank you, Kelly.
You're welcome, Kelly.
So if there's nothing else on the order of business today, again, I'd like to thank everyone for their participation. Again, there's a standard meeting with Oregon Department of Energy tomorrow. We'll try and get a little bit of summary of today's work for them. Again, to the proponents, we'll be reaching out a little bit more to make sure we've got everything in alignment of what the intents were, and try and put this into a 2021 version that we can take to both the residential board and to the seed. Thank you, everyone. And there will be a recording of this available. I'm not sure when it's going to get up online. We will try and make sure that the spreadsheets that were shown today, as well as, again, the proposals that were put forth today are still available at the division website. If you have questions, feel free to send something to the division and we can help you walk through it. And with that, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.